A quiet neighborhood. The Reynolds house stands alone at the end of a cul-de-sac. Lights glow warmly from within. Inside, Casey Reynolds, pretty and intelligent, moves around her kitchen making popcorn. The microwave beeps. The house is otherwise silent. Her parents are away for the weekend. Casey's phone rings, startling her. She picks it up from the counter. She answers, listening to an unknown caller. The conversation begins innocently enough, with Casey looking amused at first. She's about to hang up, but pauses as the caller says something that catches her interest. Casey mentions the movie she's about to watch while preparing to enjoy her evening alone. The caller seems particularly interested in her taste in horror films. Casey smiles and moves to her living room, phone tucked between ear and shoulder, carrying her popcorn bowl. As the conversation continues, Casey appears increasingly engaged, sharing her thoughts on what makes horror films effective. She seems to appreciate the caller's understanding of her perspective. But then the caller's tone shifts, and Casey's expression changes. Her comfort visibly evaporates. Casey stops in the middle of her living room, body language now tense. She attempts to end the call with a nervous laugh, but freezes at the caller's response. Fear flashes across her face. Her eyes dart involuntarily toward the sliding glass door that leads to her patio and backyard. The curtains are open. Outside, only pitch blackness. Casey's questioning grows more urgent, her face paling. She approaches the door cautiously, clearly reluctant. She suggests names, hoping this is just a prank by friends. The fear in her eyes deepens as she listens to the response. A tapping sound on the glass. Casey jumps, her whole body tensing. She whispers into the phone, visibly frightened now. The caller seems to propose something. A game. Casey's expression shifts from fear to a hint of calculation as she listens to the rules. But the terror never leaves her eyes. Casey backs away from the door, scanning the room for a weapon. She answers questions, apparently about horror movies, taking deep breaths to steady herself. A crash echoes from somewhere in the house. Casey spins around, eyes wide. The caller seems to taunt her about something being under her bed. Casey's face contorts with fear. She slowly moves toward the hallway, attempting once more to end this nightmare. The lights go out. The house plunges into darkness. Casey screams, her silhouette barely visible in the dim ambient light from outside. Her panicked questions go unanswered as a shadow moves across the wall. Casey gasps, clutching the phone tighter. Casey bolts for the front door. It's locked with a chain she doesn't remember attaching. She struggles with it frantically, pulling and twisting. She spins around. A dark figure emerges from the hallway, wearing a white ghostly mask. In their hand gleams a large hunting knife. Casey's scream pierces the night. Bright sunlight washes over the school grounds. Students mill about, chatting in groups. Everything feels normal, peaceful. A news van is parked at the curb. A reporter stands with a microphone filming. She speaks solemnly to the camera, reporting on the brutal murder of 17-year-old Casey Reynolds the previous night. Mackenzie Mack Carpenter, intelligent and independent, opens her locker. Her best friend Riley Porter, energetic and pop culture obsessed, rushes up to her. Riley's face is animated with shock and morbid excitement as she relays information about Casey's death. Mack's solemn expression and body language indicate discomfort with discussing the tragic details. Riley apologizes with a quick gesture, though her eyes still show fascination with the horrific event disrupting their small town's peace. Jake Bennett, handsome and confident, approaches the girls. They exchange concerned looks and brief conversation. Jake appears genuinely affected by Casey's death, mentioning their shared class last semester. Principal Harris walks down the hall with a police officer, Detective Wilson. Riley whispers to Mac, nodding toward the detective. Mac's expression suggests she wishes school had been canceled. Jake explains why they are being kept at school, for questioning and safety. The three exchange worried glances when Riley suggests the killer might come to school. Jake excuses himself to get to class, promising to text Mac at lunch. After Jake leaves, Riley leans in close to Mac, her eyes twinkling with curiosity about Mac and Jake's relationship. Mac rolls her eyes dismissively, mentioning Jake's girlfriend. Riley quickly corrects her. They broke up last week. Mac's distracted response suggests her priorities lie elsewhere, with maintaining her grades and getting into Stanford. Mac's phone buzzes. She checks it, sighing at yet another text from her father. Riley acknowledges their parents' heightened concern, noting this is Riverside's first murder in approximately 25 years. They start walking to class. Riley brings up Nathan's upcoming party on Friday. Mac's expression shows disbelief at the timing. Riley quickly explains it's been repurposed as a memorial for Casey, suggesting that being together might help everyone cope. As they approach their classroom, Mac notices Detective Wilson watching her from down the hall. Their eyes meet briefly before Mac enters the classroom, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Students sit quietly. The mood is somber. The teacher stands at the front, offering words of comfort and mentioning available counseling services. Mac stares out the window, only half listening. Her phone vibrates silently in her pocket. She discreetly checks it under her desk. The color drains from her face as she reads a message from an unknown number, asking about her favorite scary movie. She looks around nervously, wondering if someone's watching her. Max sits at the kitchen island doing homework. Her father, David Carpenter, prepares dinner. There's an awkward tension between them. David mentions speaking with Detective Wilson, his expression concerned. Mac barely looks up from her work, her posture suggesting she's trying to downplay the situation. David's face hardens as he implements a strict curfew. Mac's frustration is evident in her expression, but when David trails off mid-sentence, her face softens. The unspoken weight of a past tragedy hangs between them. Mac's mother was killed in a home invasion 3 years ago, explaining David's overprotectiveness. Mac's expression shows reluctant understanding as she agrees to be careful. David also forbids parties, drawing a resigned sigh from Mac. The house phone rings. David answers, his forehead creasing when no one responds. He hangs up, mentioning it's the third such call today. Mac's phone chimes. She checks it, her face paling at a message from the unknown number mentioning her father can't protect her forever. When David inquires, Mac quickly masks her reaction, lying that it's just Riley confirming homework. Mac sits on her bed, phone in hand, talking to Riley on FaceTime. Her expression is troubled as she explains the strange text from an unknown number. Riley's face on the screen shows growing concern as Mac describes the messages. Mac's reluctance to involve authorities is clear from her body language. Riley appears to strongly disagree, likely urging caution given what happened to Casey. Mac's phone beeps with another text. She pauses her conversation to check it, her body visibly tensing. The new message asks about what she sees looking out her window right now. Mac freezes, eyes darting to her second-story window that faces the backyard. The curtains are open, revealing only darkness outside. Riley's concern intensifies on the screen as Mac whispers her response, eyes fixed on the window. Slowly, Mac approaches the window, peering out into the darkness. Her searching gaze finds nothing at first, just shadows. Then a flash of movement, something white, like a mask. Mac gasps, stumbling backward. Riley's face on the screen shows alarm as Mac explains what she saw. With shaking hands, Mac quickly closes her curtains. Her phone rings. Unknown number. Mac stares at it while Riley's face on the FaceTime screen grows increasingly panicked. Despite Riley's apparent objections, Mac's finger hovers over the accept button. She presses it. Mac listens to the voice, her face draining of color. She questions the caller, her hand gripping the phone tightly. As the conversation continues, Mac's expression shifts from fear to horror as the caller seemingly admits involvement in Casey's death. Mac threatens to call police, but something the caller says stops her cold. Her eyes widen in shock. The caller knows her father is downstairs making tea. How could they know that? Mac's posture changes subtly as the caller appears to propose a question. She listens intently, then answers without hesitation, her horror movie knowledge apparently saving her, at least temporarily. Relief floods her face momentarily as the caller seems to honor some agreement, but her eyes remain haunted as she ends the call. Riley's frantic face still shows on FaceTime as Mac stands frozen, staring at her phone. Mac's expression hardens with resolve as she decides to tell her father. Mac sits across from Detective Wilson in an interview room. Her father paces nearby, anxiety evident in every movement. Mac's face shows conviction as she explains the texts and call, insisting they came from Casey's killer. David interjects, his confusion and fear for his daughter plain on his face. Detective Wilson's expression is measured, professional, though his eyes betray concern. He explains the possible motives of such killers, sometimes random, sometimes connected in ways not yet discovered. He slides a folder across to Mac. Inside are photos of different masks, white ghost faces, Halloween masks, etc. Mac studies them intently before shaking her head slightly. It was too dark to be certain what she saw. Detective Wilson promises protection, a patrol car outside their house. David's gratitude is palpable. The detective then turns back to Mac, encouraging her to think about any possible connection to Casey, no matter how small. Mac appears frustrated, insisting there was no connection beyond attending the same school. Detective Wilson's grave expression suggests sometimes that's enough. Mac walks quickly, head down. Other students whisper as she passes, their stares following her. News has clearly spread about her connection to the case. Riley catches up to her, concern written across her face. Mac's exhaustion shows as she explains her morning at the police station. Riley's eyes widen with shock as Mac reveals that Detective Wilson believes the killer might target her next. Before Mac can elaborate, they turn a corner and nearly collide with Nathan Bell, athletic and popular. Nathan apologizes, nodding in greeting to both girls. Riley quickly shifts topics to Nathan's upcoming party. Nathan's face shows conflicted emotions, seemingly torn between canceling out of respect for Casey and proceeding with what has become a memorial event. At the mention of the party, Mac's face clouds over. She clearly doesn't feel comfortable attending any social gathering right now, especially one where Casey's death will be the central topic. Nathan notices her reaction and offers a sympathetic look. Riley, ever the social butterfly, seems oblivious to Mac's discomfort as she confirms their attendance. Mac's subtle headshake goes unnoticed by Riley, but not by Nathan. He gives Mac an understanding nod, suggesting she should do whatever feels right. The bell rings. Students begin moving toward classrooms. As they part ways, Nathan mentions something about safety in numbers that makes Mac pause thoughtfully. Perhaps there is wisdom in not being alone right now. Mac sits alone at a computer, scrolling through news articles about Casey's murder. The gruesome details make her wince. She clicks on another tab, information about similar murders in neighboring towns over the past decade. Her brow furrows in concentration. A hand touches her shoulder. Mac jumps, spinning around. It's just Jake. He raises his hands apologetically, then sits beside her. His eyes scan the screen, expression growing serious as he realizes what she's researching. Jake appears to question her, gesturing to the articles. Mac's response is defensive at first, then softens as she explains her theory. Jake listens intently, his face showing growing concern. He takes out his phone, pulling up something to show Mac. On his screen is a social media page for a film club that met 2 years ago. Among the members, Casey Reynolds, and in the background of one photo, barely noticeable, Mac. Her eyes widen in recognition. She had forgotten about attending one meeting before quitting. Their heads bend together over the phone, searching for more connections. Neither notices someone watching them from between the bookshelves, a shadow that disappears when they finally look up. Mac sits on the living room couch with her laptop. David enters with 2 mugs of tea, setting one beside her. His careful movements and frequent glances toward the windows reveal his anxiety. Through the curtains, the faint red and blue lights of a police cruiser parked outside pulse rhythmically. Mac opens a file on her computer, showing it to her father. His expression changes from confusion to recognition to pain. Photos of Mac's mother, news clippings about her murder 3 years ago. David shakes his head, clearly uncomfortable with this direction. Mac points to certain details in the articles, her face intense with concentration. David's resistance is visible in his posture and expression. He doesn't want to revisit this trauma. But something Mac shows him next makes him pause. He leans closer to the screen, eyes narrowing. The article mentions the suspected killer was never caught. The weapon, a hunting knife. The method, eerily similar to Casey's murder. David's face pales as he makes the connection Mac has already discovered. His expression shifts to panic as he reaches for his phone. Before he can dial, the house phone rings. They both freeze, staring at it. After 3 rings, David slowly approaches and answers. His face transforms as he listens, then wordlessly hands the phone to Mac. Mac takes it, her hand trembling slightly. As she listens, her expression cycles through fear, anger, and determination. She doesn't speak much, just listens. Then her face hardens with resolve as she hangs up. She immediately grabs her cell phone, texting rapidly. David questions her, clearly alarmed. Mac's response appears to surprise him. She's not running, she's setting a trap. Music pulses, teenagers dance, drink, laugh. But there's an undercurrent of tension. Conversations repeatedly turn to Casey, to Mac, to the killer still at large. Riley stands by the drinks table, checking her phone anxiously. Her relief is visible when Mac finally arrives. They huddle together, deep in conversation. Riley's expression shows doubt, then reluctant agreement with whatever Mac is proposing. Jake approaches, greeting them both but focusing on Mac. His concern is evident. The three move to a quieter corner, where Mac appears to explain her plan. Jake's face shows increasing alarm, then grudging respect. Nathan joins them, confused by their serious demeanor at what's supposed to be a party. Mac shows them all something on her phone. Nathan's eyes widen. He nods, apparently agreeing to help. The four split up, moving through the party with purpose. Mac positions herself near the patio doors, watching. Riley mingles but keeps looking back at Mac. Jake stands near the front door, vigilant. Nathan tells something to the DJ, who nods and changes the music to something slower, quieter. Mac's phone buzzes. She checks it. Her face remains calm, but her knuckles whiten around the phone. She signals to Jake, who begins moving through the crowd toward her. But before he reaches her, the lights go out. Screams and nervous laughter erupt. Cell phone flashlights beam on. In the chaotic lighting, Mac slips away from her position, moving with purpose through the house. She climbs the stairs, glancing behind her occasionally. Mac moves quietly, her phone illuminating the way. She enters a bedroom, closing the door behind her. She positions herself near the window, waiting. Her phone buzzes again. She reads the message, a small smile playing at her lips. The bedroom door slowly opens. A figure enters, wearing the white ghost mask. In their hand gleams a hunting knife. The masked figure advances slowly toward Mac, knife raised. Mac stands her ground by the window, her posture betraying no fear. Instead, her eyes narrow with focus, like she's been expecting this confrontation. The masked figure tilts their head, seemingly confused by Mac's lack of terror. They take another step forward. Suddenly, the bedroom door bursts open. Detective Wilson stands in the doorway, gun drawn. The masked figure spins around, startled. In that moment of distraction, Mac lunges forward, knocking the knife from the killer's hand. It clatters to the floor. The masked figure recovers quickly, shoving Mac hard against the wall. She stumbles but doesn't fall. Detective Wilson advances, ordering the killer to freeze. Instead, the masked figure charges toward him, knocking him off balance. The detective's gun fires into the ceiling. The commotion draws attention. Footsteps pound up the stairs. The masked figure darts past the detective into the hallway. The masked figure races down the hall, shoving past Jake, who appears at the top of the stairs. Jake tumbles backward, colliding with Riley, who was just behind him. They both fall in a tangle of limbs. The killer vaults over them, taking the stairs three at a time. Detective Wilson follows, shouting for everyone to clear a path. Mac emerges from the bedroom, face determined. She helps Jake and Riley up. Then all three rush after the detective. Pandemonium erupts as the masked figure charges through the crowd of teenagers. Drinks spill, people scream, music continues to thump through speakers. Nathan tries to tackle the killer but misses, crashing into a table. The masked figure heads for the back door, shouldering it open. Detective Wilson follows, his gun raised again. Mac, Jake, and Riley push through the confused partygoers, intent on following. The masked figure sprints across the expansive lawn toward the adjacent woods. Detective Wilson stops at the edge of the patio, taking careful aim. He fires. The bullet catches the killer in the shoulder, sending them stumbling. But they recover, continuing their desperate flight into the trees. Mac runs out onto the patio, followed by Jake and Riley. Detective Wilson tries to block them, clearly ordering them to stay back. Mac argues, pointing toward the woods, her face intense. The detective shakes his head firmly, then speaks into his radio, likely calling for backup. Mac feigns acceptance, but when Detective Wilson turns to coordinate with officers arriving at the front of the house, she slips past him. Jake notices and rushes after her. Riley hesitates, then follows as well. Darkness envelops everything. Mac, Jake, and Riley activate their phone flashlights, the beams cutting through the thick shadow. They move slowly, following a trail of disturbed undergrowth and occasional blood droplets that gleam black in the dim light. Jake's expression suggests they should turn back. Mac shakes her head, determined. Riley looks terrified but stays close to her friends. They press deeper into the woods. A twig snaps somewhere ahead. They freeze. Mac gestures for them to spread out slightly. Jake reluctantly complies, moving to the right. Riley, visibly trembling, takes a few steps to the left. Mac advances forward alone, her flashlight beam steady despite her obvious tension. The beam catches something white among the trees, the mask. But as she approaches, she finds only the discarded mask hanging from a branch. A decoy. Mac's eyes widen with realization. She spins around, frantically signaling to her friends. Too late. A dark figure rises behind Riley, no longer masked. A knife glints in the flashlight's beam. Riley senses the presence and begins to turn. Detective Wilson moves through the trees with two uniformed officers. They sweep their flashlights methodically across the forest floor, tracking the killer. The detective's face shows grim determination. A scream pierces the night. Riley's voice. Detective Wilson's head snaps in that direction. He gestures sharply to the officers, and they all run toward the sound. Riley lies on the ground, clutching her arm where a shallow cut bleeds. Above her stands the revealed killer, Nathan Bell. His face contorts with rage and pain, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. The hunting knife trembles in his other hand. Jake charges at Nathan from the side, tackling him. They both go down hard. The knife flies from Nathan's grasp, disappearing into the underbrush. Mac rushes to Riley, helping her up. Riley's face is pale with shock, but the wound appears superficial. Nathan and Jake struggle on the ground, rolling through dirt and leaves. Despite his injury, Nathan fights with manic strength. He gets the upper hand, pinning Jake and wrapping his hands around his throat. Mac looks around desperately for a weapon. She spots the fallen knife half buried in leaves. She lunges for it, grabbing the handle. Without hesitation, she rushes toward the fighting young men. Nathan sees her coming. He releases Jake and scrambles backward, reaching into his jacket. He pulls out a second knife. Jake gasps for breath, too winded to move. Nathan and Mac circle each other. His face twists into a smile that holds no warmth. Mac's expression remains focused, calculating. Behind Nathan, Riley helps Jake to his feet. They begin edging toward Mac, trying to flank Nathan. Nathan senses the movement. He feints toward Mac, then spins and slashes at Riley. She jumps back, avoiding the blade by inches. Jake pulls her further away, positioning himself protectively in front of her. Nathan turns back to Mac, who has used the distraction to close the distance between them. Their knives clash, the sound of metal on metal sharp in the quiet woods. Nathan's greater strength pushes Mac backward. She stumbles over a root, but regains her balance quickly. Flashlight beams dance through the trees, Detective Wilson and the officers approaching. Nathan glances toward the lights, momentarily distracted. Mac seizes the opportunity, kicking hard at his knee. Nathan goes down with a silent howl of pain. Before he can recover, Mac is on him, knocking his knife away and pressing her blade against his throat. Her face shows a conflict of emotions: rage, justice, restraint. Nathan glares up at her, hatred burning in his eyes. Detective Wilson bursts into the clearing, gun drawn. He takes in the scene with a quick sweep, Mac holding a knife to Nathan's throat, Jake and Riley standing nearby, both injured but alive. He approaches carefully, speaking calmly to Mac. Her hand trembles but doesn't move the knife. Jake steps forward, placing a gentle hand on Mac's shoulder. She looks up at him, tears now streaming down her face. Slowly, she lowers the knife and backs away from Nathan. The officers rush in, subduing Nathan, who doesn't resist. The fight seems to have drained out of him. As they handcuff him, his eyes remain locked on Mac, a promise of retribution that makes her shiver despite herself. Nathan sits at a metal table, his shoulder bandaged. His hands are cuffed in front of him. His expression is blank, almost bored, as Detective Wilson paces on the other side of the table. Through the one-way glass, Mac watches with her father beside her. David has one arm around her shoulders, his face a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Mac's expression is harder to read, part closure, part new trauma. Nathan suddenly looks directly at the mirror, as if he can see through it to Mac. A smile spreads slowly across his face. Detective Wilson slams his hand on the table, drawing Nathan's attention back. Nathan's smile doesn't fade as he begins speaking, apparently confessing. Mac's eyes narrow as she watches Nathan talk. Each gesture, each expression makes her flinch slightly. David notices her reaction and gives her shoulder a gentle squeeze. Riley and Jake enter the observation room. Riley's arm is bandaged more professionally now. Jake's neck shows bruising from Nathan's stranglehold. They stand on either side of Mac, creating a protective formation. All three stare through the glass at the boy they thought they knew. Nathan's animated gestures suggest he's explaining his motive. Detective Wilson listens impassively, occasionally writing notes. Nathan points to the mirror again, his expression darkening. Whatever connection he's making to Mac clearly disturbs even the seasoned detective. Detective Wilson emerges from the interrogation room, his face grim. He approaches Mac, David, Riley, and Jake, who wait in the hallway. The detective's posture suggests exhaustion as he explains something to them. Mac's reaction shows shock, then dawning comprehension. She sits down heavily on a nearby bench. Riley joins her, offering silent comfort. Jake remains standing, his expression hardening as he listens to the detective. David's face transforms with recognition, then horror. He looks at his daughter with new understanding of the danger she was in. Whatever Nathan has revealed connects deeply to their family's tragic past. Sunlight streams through open curtains. The house feels different. Still a home, but the innocence is gone. Max sorts through old photographs spread across the coffee table. Her mother smiles from many of them. David enters with 2 mugs of tea, setting one beside Mac. He sits next to her, picking up one of the photos, a family portrait from years ago. His expression is melancholic but peaceful. The raw grief has evolved into something more manageable. Max shows him another photograph, her mother standing outside the high school. In the background, barely noticeable, a teenage Nathan Bell. David's eyes widen with recognition. This connection was what Nathan revealed in his confession. His father had been investigated for Mac's mother's murder, but never charged. Nathan had grown up believing his family was destroyed by the Carpenters. His revenge plot began with Casey, who simply resembled Mac, and was meant to end with Mac herself. David puts the photo down, shaking his head at the twisted logic of hatred and revenge. He takes Mac's hand, his expression conveying both sorrow for what she's endured and pride in her strength. Mac leans against her father's shoulder, closing her eyes briefly. The doorbell rings. David goes to answer it. Jake and Riley stand on the porch, offering tentative smiles. Mac appears in the hallway behind her father. For a moment, she just looks at her friends, the people who stood by her, who followed her into the darkness. Then she steps forward, embracing them both. David watches from the doorway, a bittersweet smile on his face. He knows his daughter has been forever changed by these events, but he also sees her resilience. She has faced the legacy of her mother's death and emerged stronger. Life has resumed its rhythm. Students pass through the hallways laughing and talking, but something has shifted. The innocence of before is gone, replaced by a wary awareness. Mac walks with Riley and Jake on either side. Other students no longer whisper and stare. They nod respectfully. Mac's ordeal has transformed her status from outsider to survivor. Principal Harris passes them, offering a solemn nod. On the wall behind him, a memorial has been established for Casey Reynolds. Photos, flowers, notes. Mac pauses by it, placing a single flower among the others. Her expression shows respect for a life cut short, a victim who never understood why she had been targeted. Mac stands alone before her mother's grave. She places fresh flowers next to the headstone. Her face is peaceful now, the haunted look in her eyes fading. She traces her mother's name with her fingertips, then stands. Detective Wilson waits at a respectful distance. He approaches as Mac turns from the grave. They walk together along the cemetery path. The detective's posture suggests he's delivering news. Nathan's sentencing, perhaps. Mac nods, her expression showing neither joy nor sorrow, just acceptance. At the cemetery gates, Jake waits by his car. Riley sits in the passenger seat, waving when she spots Mac. Detective Wilson says goodbye with a respectful nod. Mac walks toward her friends, shoulders straight, head high. Mac settles into the back seat. Riley turns around, showing Mac something on her phone. Tickets to a horror movie festival. Jake watches Mac in the rearview mirror, his expression questioning. For a moment, Mac hesitates. Then she smiles. Not the carefree smile of before, but a new one. A survivor's smile. Riley cheers silently, putting away her phone. Jake starts the car. As they drive away from the cemetery, Mac looks out the window. The setting sun casts long shadows across the gravestones. But she's no longer afraid of the dark, a dimly lit room. Newspaper clippings about Nathan's arrest and Casey's murder cover one wall. Photos of Mac, Riley, and Jake leaving the courthouse after the sentencing hearing are prominently displayed. A hand reaches out, pinning a new article to the wall. Killer sentenced to life. The hand moves to a nearby table, picking up a knife identical to Nathan's. It tests the blade with a thumb. A new mask lies on the table, different from Nathan's ghost face but equally terrifying. The hand caresses it almost lovingly. Then picks up a cell phone, scrolling through photos, surveillance pictures of Mac, Riley, and Jake. Their smiling faces frozen on the screen. The phone begins composing a new text message to Mac. "What's your favorite scary movie?" The sequel is always bloodier. Nathan sits on one side of a glass partition, prison jumpsuit hanging loosely on his frame. His eyes, once full of rage, now seem empty. A visitor sits opposite him, face obscured from our view. Nathan listens to something the visitor says. His expression changes. First confusion, then understanding, then a slow smile spreads across his face. The first real emotion he's shown since his arrest. The visitor places a hand against the glass. Nathan mirrors the gesture. Their hands align perfectly. Same size, same shape. A family resemblance. The visitor stands to leave. As they turn, we catch just a glimpse of their profile. Enough to see the resemblance to Nathan. A relative. Someone continuing what Nathan started. Nathan watches them go, his smile widening. His eyes return to the glass. No longer empty, but filled with anticipation. In the reflection, we see his visitor walking away, pulling out a cell phone. The house is dark except for a single light in Mac's bedroom window. Inside, Mac sits at her desk, working on college applications. Her laptop screen illuminates her face with a blue glow. She's older now, more mature. The trauma has shaped her, but not broken her. Her phone buzzes. She glances at it. A text from Riley about weekend plans. Nothing suspicious. Max smiles, typing a quick reply. She sets the phone down and returns to her application essay. The topic, describe a challenge you've overcome. Her fingers hover over the keyboard for a moment, then begin typing with confidence. Words flow across the screen describing not victimhood, but survival. Not trauma, but resilience. Outside her window, the neighborhood is peaceful. No shadows move across the lawn. No masked figures watch from the trees. The horror has ended. Or perhaps it's merely waiting for the sequel.